All right. Okay, welcome back to yet another video. Possibly this one is going to be even shorter than the previous one. In this video, we need to talk about precise measurements and statistics. Again, very little topic, not a whole lot to say about it, but truly fundamental. In fact, I cannot tell you how many people I have met that said something like, oh, you cannot make precise measurements in Blender. Let me tell you, those people do not know what they're talking about. In Blender, you can go as precise as micrometers, which is plenty enough for any kind of precise measurement you might need to do. And today we're going to talk a little bit about it. Okay, so I have created for myself a little cube over here. And the first thing that you need to know about turning on precise measurements is this one. You have to select the object, go into the usual edit mode, and then guess what? Once again, we will find our way to the top right corner and we will activate this option, edge length. Now, as you can see, there are many more options that you could turn on, like edge angle. But let's cover just edge length for the moment. Everything else is pretty much the same. So edge length allows you to see the precise measurement of edges that you have selected. So if you have everything selected, you will see the precise measurement of everything in that geometry. And as you can see right now, it is expressed in centimeters. That is because in our properties panel, under the units for length, we have chosen centimeters. But you could turn this all the way down to micrometers. The average human hair width is approximately 70 micrometers. However, it can range from anywhere between 20 and 200, something like that, depending on the types and thickness of the hair. But I'm just trying to say that you can be as precise as you want inside Blender. Anyone who tells you otherwise doesn't know what they're talking about. Now I'm gonna go back to centimeters because that is plenty enough for the kind of precision that we need today. As you can guess by now, if I were to turn on also edge angles, then I would have access to some additional information. Okay. But right now we are going to discuss just edges because this is the process that I used in the 18th lesson to sort of like gauge the size of the 3D model. Now, bear in mind that this is not something that you have to do at the beginning of your 3D modeling process. It could come in at the very end. It's not relevant at all to the way you go about 3D modeling. It is relevant if you are doing something that is on specs and you're following precise measurements. Okay, that is absolutely relevant in that case. But if you're just sort of free modeling, you could do that at the very end to just have a scale that makes sense. And I would usually recommend to keep a scale that makes sense for the object that you're 3D modeling, because at some point you might want to export it to, say, a game engine. And when you do so, you want to make sure that your object is not out of scale, that it makes sense in a digital world. Now, since we were talking about game engines and the idea of exporting an asset, another topic of this video are statistics. Now, it's super simple to turn on statistics. You go over here at the usual overlays and you turn them on from here and they will appear over here. And this is providing you with very precise information about everything that is happening in the 3D scene. If I select this object and I turn on edit mode, now I am getting information about the stuff that I have selected. Now, this information is important for those that are creating, for example, game assets, and they are provided with specs that need to be respected with requirements. For example, you might have a requirement that your 3D model needs to be, I don't know, for example, under 100,000 triangles, because that has been determined as the threshold for some performance in the game, and you don't want anything more complex than that. So that is very briefly how you turn on statistics. And while we're at it, this is also where you turn on the wireframe that you see I have turned on right now. And this wireframe option allows me to see the wireframe of every geometry in the scene, even when I am in object mode. So normally, if I deactivate this, I would not see the wireframe of an object unless I am in edit mode. However, there are times where you need to see the wireframe of another object while you're working in edit mode on another object. And so that is one of the use cases for turning on wireframe. Now, like we discussed for normals in the previous video, if you have a very complex 3D model and you forget the edge length turned on, you will have a mess like this one. So make sure that you turn it off when you do not need it. Now, since we are discussing precise measurements, you should know that the default cube, it comes in with sides that are 2 meters long. That is 200 centimeters. And two things that you should know are that if you scale an object, any object, while you are in edit mode, you will be affecting the sides of the geometry, right? But that is not the same as scaling the actual object. So as you can see, the scale over here remained 1, although we scaled it from being 2 meters wide to being almost 30 centimeters wide, okay? So to reiterate, if I was in edit mode and scaled it to 1/10, okay, now I have precise 20 centimeter edges, but the scale is still 1, which is not the same as creating a cube and scaling it from object mode to 0.1. You can see that now they are the same sides, but the scale is now 1/10. Now that can be deliberate and intentional or not. If you want the scale to be 1/10, you're good. If you want to instead have the scale set to 1, what you want to do is press Ctrl+A, which will bring up the Apply menu, and then you want to apply all transforms. And now you see that all transformations have been applied and the new scale is 1 once again. Now, as you can see, there are several options. You could just apply the scale. When we talk about transforms, we are talking about scale, rotation, and location. So if I were to rotate this, scale it a little bit, and move it, as you can see now, the values are all over the place. If I now apply all transforms, this is going to be reset, okay? So again, I would suggest that you play with it a little bit to get a sense of how it works, because you want to use this in a very deliberate and intentional way, because now there is no way for you to reset this cube, okay? You cannot go back and put 0. This is the new 0. And so unless you deliberately wanted to achieve this result, there's no way you can go back. I mean, you could obviously press Ctrl+Z right now, but had you done this in a workflow where you change your mind, say like 2000th operation later, you cannot really Ctrl+Z all the way back to that moment. Okay? Right on. So that is all for this video. I'm so excited that we are almost through this series of shorter and less exciting, but nevertheless fundamental videos. And so I'll see you in the next video.